If George Washington is remembered as the father of the United States, then the fourth president, James Madison, is often called the father of the United States Constitution and the American Bill of Rights. His enormous contributions not only transformed America, but also laid the foundation for modern democracy around the world. Yet few people know that the man who helped build the foundations of the United States would later spend his final years struggling financially and living a difficult life. James Madison, the fourth president of the United States, was not only a talented politician, but also the brilliant mind behind many of the principles of liberty and human rights that America has upheld for centuries. In today's video, we will explore the life of James Madison, the man remembered throughout American history as the father of the United States Constitution. James Madison Jr. was born on March 16, 1751, at Belle Grove Plantation near Port Conway, Virginia, United States. He was the eldest child in a family of 12 children. However, Madison's childhood was not as peaceful as many might imagine. 3 of his siblings died when they were still very young. Tragedy struck the family again during the summer of 1775, when his 7-year-old sister Elizabeth and his 3-year-old brother Reuben died after an epidemic spread through Orange County due to contaminated water. James Madison grew up on his family's tobacco plantation. Over time, his father purchased more enslaved workers and expanded the estate by more than 2,000 hectares, eventually becoming the largest landowner in the region. Growing up in such a wealthy environment allowed Madison to receive an excellent education from an early age. From the ages of 11 to 16, Madison studied under John Robertson, a Scottish tutor who specialized in educating the children of plantation owners. He later continued his studies with Professor Thomas Gordon in preparation for college. While most young men in Virginia at the time chose to attend the College of William and Mary, James Madison instead decided to enroll at the College of New Jersey, now known as Princeton University. There he became close friends with Philip Freneau, who would later become a famous poet of the American Revolution. Madison's friends described him as an incredibly hardworking student who slept only about 4 hours each night. He spent the rest of his time reading books on philosophy and the histories of ancient Greece and Rome. James Madison's studies at Princeton included Latin, Greek, theology, and philosophy. He especially enjoyed participating in debates at the school, thanks to his dedication and serious approach to learning. Madison completed his Bachelor of Arts degree in just 2 years, instead of the usual 3. After graduating, Madison considered pursuing a career as either a teacher or a lawyer, but neither path proved successful. As a result, he chose to remain at Princeton for a while longer to study Hebrew and political philosophy before returning home in 1772. Biographers believe that Madison's years at Princeton deeply influenced his political beliefs. He became fascinated by the ideals of liberty during the Enlightenment and gradually developed the progressive political ideas of the 18th century. From that point on, Madison devoted himself to promoting freedom and the pursuit of happiness. The greatest efforts of his life were dedicated to protecting civil liberties and political freedom. However, after returning home, Madison still struggled to find a suitable profession related to his education. During this period, he mainly worked as a tutor for his younger siblings. Even so, he continued studying legal publications on his own. Madison often described himself as a student of law, even though he never officially practiced as a lawyer. However, James Madison never officially practiced law. Because of this, later in life he became very sensitive to the term half-lawyer, a mocking expression used to describe people who studied law but never actually practiced as attorneys. In 1774, James Madison was appointed to the local Committee of Safety, the organization responsible for overseeing the activities of the militia at the time. This marked the beginning of his career in politics and public service. 2 years later, as the American colonies stood on the brink of war with Great Britain, Madison gradually became involved in the growing debates over independence. In 1777, he ran for a seat in the Virginia House of Delegates, but was defeated. One major reason for his loss was his refusal to provide free whiskey to voters on Election Day, a very common practice at the time. However, Madison viewed the custom as a form of voter bribery that went against the principles he strongly believed in. Despite losing his first election, Madison soon secured a seat on the Virginia Council of State shortly afterward. During his time there, he met and became close friends with Thomas Jefferson, who was then serving as governor of Virginia. Jefferson would later become the third president of the United States and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. In 1780, at just 29 years old, James Madison became one of the youngest delegates to the Continental Congress, the governing body that later evolved into the United States Congress. Although Madison was physically small and often in poor health, he earned the admiration of those around him through his intelligence, knowledge, and extraordinary work ethic. He always prepared carefully for debates and political challenges. Because of this, Madison quickly rose to prominence as a young leader with great potential and earned the respect of many of his colleagues. After the American colonies gained independence from Great Britain in 1776, a document known as the Articles of Confederation was approved in 1781 and became the first governing framework of the United States. Under the system, most powers were granted to the individual states, making each state function almost like an independent nation rather than part of a unified federation. As a result, the central government became too weak to manage national debt, maintain a standing army, or regulate the country's overall economy. From this reality, James Madison came to believe that the United States needed significant change. After studying the systems of government used by many other nations and reading hundreds of books on politics and history, Madison concluded that America needed a stronger federal government, and one capable of coordinating the states and creating a more effective financial system. In May 1787, he played a major role in organizing the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, where representatives from the American states gathered to discuss the future of the nation. There, Madison introduced the Virginia Plan, a proposal that outlined a new system of government built around three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. The system was designed so that each branch could check and balance the powers of the others, preventing any one branch from becoming too powerful. The Virginia Plan later became a major foundation of the United States Constitution, which is why James Madison is remembered throughout history as the father of the Constitution. The new Constitution was eventually drafted based on Madison's proposals as well as the debates held during the Constitutional Convention. However, for the document to officially take effect, it needed to be ratified by at least 9 of the 13 states. This was far from easy, as many states feared that the new constitution would give too much power to the federal government. In response, Madison continued to play a crucial role in promoting the ratification of the Constitution. Between 1787 and 1788, he wrote a series of influential essays explaining the advantages of the new system of government and persuading the states to support the Constitution. These writings later became known as the Federalist Papers, one of the most influential political works in American history. As a result of these efforts, the United States Constitution was ratified in 1788, and the new federal government officially began operating 1 year later. After the Constitution was adopted, Madison was elected to the first United States House of Representatives. In Congress, he went on to draft the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, which protected essential freedoms such as freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of religion. The Bill of Rights was officially ratified by the states in 1791, from 1801 to 1809, when his longtime friend Thomas Jefferson became the third president of the United States. James Madison was appointed Secretary of State. During this period, he played a key role in the Louisiana Purchase from France in 1803, a historic deal that nearly doubled the size of the United States. Madison's intelligence, political skill, and leadership quickly earned the respect of the American people. During this time, he led the nation through the difficulties of the War of 1812 between the United States and Great Britain. At the time, his wife, Dolly Madison, believed that the couple would finally have the opportunity to fulfill their dream of traveling to Paris. However, much like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, Madison left office facing serious financial difficulties. In 1817, James Madison officially retired to his Montpelier plantation. At the time, his wife, Dolly Madison, believed that the couple would finally have the opportunity to fulfill their dream of traveling to Paris. However, the memoirs of Paul Jennings, an African-American enslaved man who once worked at Madison's plantation, were published in 1865. In those memoirs, Jennings spoke of Madison with great respect. He recalled that the former president never physically abused enslaved people and did not allow overseers to do so either. According to Jennings, if an enslaved person behaved improperly, Madison would usually speak with them privately and offer advice rather than resorting to violence. Some historians believe that Madison's growing debt was one of the reasons he refused to publish his official papers and records during his lifetime. He understood that those documents held enormous historical value. He hoped they could eventually provide Dolly with money to survive. During the final years of his life, he became deeply concerned about his historical legacy, and even changing the names of individuals mentioned in various letters. By the time he was nearly 80 years old, this behavior had almost become an obsession. Historian Andrew Burstein once remarked that Madison spent the last 6 years of his life trapped in a sea of financial troubles that constantly threatened to overwhelm him. The emotional strain slowly wore down his body and spirit. In 1831 and 1832, Madison was bedridden several times due to illness. Finally, on June 28, 1836, he passed away, bringing to a close the life of one of the most important figures in American history. James Madison's legacy remains powerful even today. Throughout his life and political career, he earned the respect of scholars and ordinary people around the world. We admire Madison not because he was perfectly flawless, but because he was the man who shaped and defended the United States. By the time he was nearly 80 years old, this behavior had almost become an obsession. Historian Andrew Burstein once remarked that Madison spent the last 6 years of his life trapped in a sea of financial troubles that constantly threatened to overwhelm him. The emotional strain slowly wore down his body and spirit. Montpelier, the Madison family estate in Orange, Virginia, has since been recognized as a National Historic Landmark. In addition, many states, cities, schools, and educational institutions across the United States have been named after him. His official memorial also includes a building within the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. Beyond that, Madison's name has been used for numerous rivers, mountains, and landmarks throughout the United States.